friends, part 2 of your podcast, getting ready for the Chapter 11 test. This, what you're looking in front of you, is on page 710 in your text, and it's worth reading about the relationship between the confidence interval and the two-sided test. It's going to be part of one of the questions tomorrow, so you should know what the relationship is between the two, written right here, or page 17 and 10 in your book. I can tell you for sure that on the test tomorrow, you'll have a question similar to this. It's not the question, but you'll say, does the 95% confidence interval include 10? So they've given you mu, and they've told you what the p-value is, and you have to decide whether the value they ask you about is in the interval or not in the interval at the confidence that they say. So I would check out these odd ones because this is a question on the test. Remember in class we went through a couple problems like this where I actually showed you how to tear apart a problem, identify all of the relevant information. Particularly, you're going to have a problem where you have to identify the population of interest and the parameter of interest. What is the group they're trying to learn about, and what do they want to know about that group? Be able to write the null and alternative hypothesis, deciding what goes in the middle. Again, these are skills between your notes and the homework problems you've done. You should be pretty comfortable with this, but I'm just trying to narrow down what you actually need to know. Just to build on what I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we talked about the relationship between a hypothesis test and a confidence interval. Remember I said in Chapter 10, when you make a confidence interval, you put the sample statistic in the middle of the normal curve, and you use the standard error to build out the standard deviations. In Chapter 11, which is what we're in now, when you're doing a hypothesis test, you put the population parameter, the assumption that's made about the population parameter, and you put the statistic on there, and you find the area on the curve. And that's the p-value, the area that's above one tail or below or both tails. And what you did in this one is you said if the parameter is inside the confidence interval, then you accept the null hypothesis. Whereas here, if the p-value is too low, if the statistic is too far away from the parameter, then I reject the null hypothesis. Again, all of the calculations can be done with the calculator. You should know the z-test, the t-test, one prop test, and you should also know the z-interval, the t-interval, and the one prop z-interval as well. All right, now I got to say this gets a pretty big chunk of the test considering how much time we spent on it, but this is important. Okay, you're going to have parts of 2 of the open response questions are going to ask you to identify the type 1 and type 2 errors, what they mean. So let's start with the basics. All right, a type 1 error is when the null hypothesis is true, but I reject it. That is the alpha level. And the type 2 error is that the null hypothesis is not true, the alternative hypothesis is true, but I fail to reject. Okay, so in these 2 cases I'm correct in my result, but in these 2 I've made a mistake. And you should be able to identify, like we did in the problem. Right here we spent quite a bit of time on this in the class, and so I'm hoping everybody can apply this to the 2 problems you have on the test. So just to wrap it all up, what you should know is you've got to know those conditions. You've got to know when you start how to identify your population of interest, parameter of interest, state the procedure to include the null and alternative hypotheses. You got to know your 3 conditions, what they mean, how big a sample size has to be to assume it's normal. You have to be able to do the calculations, write the formula, the substitution, do the calculations on the calculator, write it down, and then write a couple of sentences about what it means in context. Additionally, you got to know these type 1 and type 2 errors, how to apply those. Again, I encourage you to read the examples in the book, check the odd answers for those types of problems in the back. I will not be answering any questions of any kind tomorrow. Your test is 3 pages. I did the 4-page test. It took me 31 minutes, and so I cut that down, cut a quarter of it out. So I am rooting for all of you, but you're going to walk into class on your own tomorrow. So prepare well. Good luck.